Warren Buffett was speaking about corporate taxes, and I thought he made some terrific points. I actually want to start with clip 15 here.
By continuing to push this, we did get a lot of questions, presumably from shareholders. One that came in was from David Eval, who said that having political positions are a part of public life. But for the life of me, I cannot understand why the CEO of a publicly traded company would antagonize roughly half of the political power in this country. Don't you have a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders not to get into such public and antagonistic debates? No matter what your political views might be, it seems even Democratic shareholders would prefer you move to the sidelines of the political debate.
No, I don't think if you're a CEO that you put your beliefs on a blind trust. I mean, I don't think you give up your citizenship. We have 270,000 people who work for Berkshire. There's not one of them that I've ever asked about their political views, or there's not one of them I've told in any way to refrain from expressing their beliefs, whether they're religious beliefs or political beliefs. And I think that my cleaning lady, Mary, does not have a voice. She doesn't have a super PAC. She can't spend $10 million trying to influence, under free speech. I mean, free speech for her is something that you can read about in the First Amendment. It doesn't mean a thing. I do have some kind of an ability to speak out, and I think that if you have an ability to speak out and you see things that you think are wrong, I think you ought to talk about them.
And it's funny how when CEOs speak out in favor of lower taxes or less regulation, more pollution, that's all okay. Oh, absolutely, go forward. When a CEO actually says, hey, let me speak for the voiceless, for the powerless, so that there's some equity in the country, all of a sudden, oh, that's against your fiduciary duty. How dare you? I love that point that Warren Buffett made, and I'm glad that he is speaking out on these issues. Now let's hear him out a little further.
This is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but is there a tax you don't like? This was a tweet that came through. When did this start? And you're aware there's another side of the balance sheet? What do you say to people like that?
I don't like any tax. I've got my tax return here from when I was 13, and I paid $7. And I can tell you that I did not like paying the $7 at that time. But the reality is that we are going to have to raise 18.5% or 19% of GDP in revenues. And I certainly think that the people who are very wealthy should do more than the people like my cleaning lady. And I'm not going to like it. When I sit down and write the check for whatever it may be, I'm not going to like it. But I also like this country. And I think that what this country offers is wonderful. And I think a very rich country should take care of the people that get the short straws in life. So I believe in things like Social Security, which is paid for by taxes. I believe in a good public school system, which is paid for by taxes.
Again, an answer that I absolutely love. It's because nobody likes paying taxes. I don't like paying it either. I especially don't like paying it because I know some of the stuff it goes to, like these needless wars that we have. But if we're going to pay those taxes, should the middle class pay more or should the rich pay more? Under our current system, Mitt Romney, who has $250 million, pays 13% in taxes. A guy making $36,000 pays 25% in taxes, nearly twice as much as Mitt Romney. Why? He doesn't have the fame, he doesn't have the lawyers, he doesn't have the accountants, etc. It's unfair. And what Buffett is saying here is indisputably true. You can't have the rich paying the least. It's just a gross injustice. Now, how about Chris Christie saying, oh, well, why don't you just pay more? Let's see how he addresses that.
Warren Buffett keeps screaming to be taxed more.
Yeah, well, he should just write a check and shut up. Really, and just contribute, okay? I mean, the fact of the matter is that I'm tired of hearing about it. If he wants to give the government more money, he's got the ability to write a check. Go ahead and write it.
There were a lot of emails that came in that similarly echoed what Chris Christie had to say.
Well, I hope they're a little more eloquent than that. But it's sort of a touching response to a $1.2 trillion deficit, isn't it? That somehow the American people will just all send in checks and take care of it. That was first fellow to come up with that was Senator McConnell, and I really it's sort of astounding to me that somebody that has the responsibility for being the minority leader in the Senate would think that you attack a $1.2 trillion or so deficit by asking for voluntary contributions. Since he did, I offered to triple his, but that's a sideshow.
Yeah, and by the way, Mitch McConnell would not give those voluntary contributions himself. What Warren Buffett was saying at the end there, if McConnell does it, I'll give triple the amount. Shockingly enough, the Republican leader in the Senate chose not to. You see, thereby proving Buffett's point, voluntary contributions isn't going to raise you a lot of money. It's a rhetorical trick that they use. Why doesn't he send it in then? That isn't his point. His point is, unless everybody does it together, we're not going to be able to tackle the deficit problem. And unlike you Republicans, Warren Buffett actually cares about the deficit, whereas Republicans don't give a damn about the deficit. In fact, Romney's plan, Gingrich's plan, and Santorum's plan would all add to the deficit. Anywhere between $2.5 trillion to $7 trillion they would pile on top of the deficit. Why? Because they all give gigantic tax cuts to the rich. All right, one last one from Warren Buffett.
There's an op-ed in today's Wall Street Journal by Rick Santorum laying out his economic agenda, and he proposes some new tax rates and policies on corporate taxes. He's halving them down to 17.5%, and on personal, he's doing just two brackets, 10% and 28%. I'm curious, beyond just the Simpson-Bowles debate, what do you think the right numbers are? What are the right brackets?
What the rate should be are rates that bring in about 18.5% or so of GDP as revenue. Now, we've had rates like that throughout most of the post-World War II period. We've managed to pull that off. It's not impossible at all. And then we just knocked the heck out of rates, roughly 10 years ago or a little less. So the interesting thing about the corporate rate is the corporate profits as a percentage of GDP last year were the highest, or just about the highest, in the last 50 years. They were 10 and a fraction percent of GDP. That's higher than we've seen in 50 years. The taxes as a percentage, corporate taxes as a percentage of GDP were 1.2%, 180 billion. That's just about the lowest we've seen. So our corporate tax rate last year effectively, in terms of taxes paid for the United States, was around 12%, which is well below those existing in most of the industrialized countries around the world. So it is a myth that the American corporations are paying 35% or anything like it.
He's 100% right about that. Their effective tax rate is 12.1%. In fact, 30 top corporations between 2008 and 2010 had a negative tax rate. Negative tax rate. We pay them money back. That's outrageous. Gets worse. Look at the effective tax rate of these different industries. Industrial industry is 2.5%. Utilities is 3.7%. Where the hell's 35%? It's nowhere near it. Financial corporations are about 15.5%. And Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's group, is also between 15 and 16%. And they're above the national average. Where the hell's 35%? Nobody's paying 35%. And then General Electric, they take the cake. Between 2008 and 2010, they paid an effective tax rate of negative 13.5%. We gave them back billions of dollars. Why? Because they've got fancy accountants that can fix the system. And then they go around and they have the nerve to complain that corporate taxes aren't low enough. Because there is no end to their greed. There's some things I disagree with Warren Buffett on, but this ain't one of them. He's 100% right. There is a reasonable tax rate that gets us to a balanced budget. I don't want something above that. He doesn't want something above that. We just want to get to that point where we can actually pay for public schools, cops, teachers, etc., pay for the things that we need to pay for as a society. And we're nowhere near it. The way we have it right now, corporate and individual income taxes clearly have to be raised. And Warren Buffett is a great spokesperson for it in this regard. Credit where credit is due.